At 76 years old, I know for sure that silence has weight. It presses down on my shoulders every morning when I wake up in my half of the bed, the other half neatly made. It's been 3 years since Veronica left, and I still wake up and forget for a second that she's no longer there. My name is Penryn Drummond. I have spent my entire life working as a forensic accountant, unraveling financial schemes that others found unsolvable. People thought they could hide their dirty deeds behind columns of numbers and convoluted transactions. But to me, the numbers were always as transparent as glass. Behind them, I saw stories of greed, deception, and fraud. People lie, numbers never do. I bought this house in Ratland 5 years ago for $800,000. A Victorian mansion with 4 bedrooms, carved stair railings, and a garden that Veronica had grown to love with all her heart. "Too big for the two of us," she said, but her eyes sparkled with admiration. After 40 years of marriage, I had learned to read her like an open book. We had only lived here for 2 years when she was diagnosed with cancer. Terminal stage, the doctor said, a matter of months. She passed away in 11 weeks, and since then this house has seemed to me both a refuge and a tomb. Every morning I go down the creaky stairs, make myself 1 cup of coffee, it used to be 2, and go to my office. I check my email, read the news, check my investments. Even in retirement, the habits of an expert accountant die hard. My day is scheduled down to the minute, as if I were still conducting investigations for the federal government. Sometimes I talk to Veronica. I know it's silly, but I feel like she's still here, among her books and photographs in the garden among the roses, which are now watered by a gardener who comes twice a week. My son Aiden is the only close person I have left. 45 years old, he works as a tax inspector. When Veronica was alive, he came every Sunday for family dinner. After her death, he continued to visit almost as often, as if trying to fill the void that had formed in our home. He brought groceries, asked about my health, and sometimes even stayed overnight. I understood that it was hard for him too. He and his mother had always been close, perhaps even closer than he and I were. I was a strict father, demanding, sometimes unyielding. My professional bias made me see the world in black and white, right or wrong, legal or illegal. 3 years ago, Aiden introduced me to his new girlfriend, Simone Bayless. She worked as a real estate appraiser at an agency specializing in luxury properties. She was 38, with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing an expensive suit and with a sharp gaze. She exuded professionalism and cold calculation. "Dad, this is Simone," Aiden said with such a nervous smile that I immediately knew it was serious. "Very pleased to meet you, Mr. Drummond," she said, her handshake firm and dry. "Just call me Penryn," I replied, noting how she quickly scanned the hallway, assessing the antique chandelier and dresser. That first evening, she was all smiles, asking questions about my career, the house, and our family. But something about her manner made my intuition, honed by decades of tracking down fraudsters, tense up like a string. "What a wonderful house you have, Penryn. A real treasure. You don't find many like this on the market in good condition these days," she said when Aiden went into the kitchen to get dessert. "Thank you. My wife and I searched for a long time to find something like this. If it's not a secret, how much did you pay for it?" I raised an eyebrow but replied, "800,000. What a bargain. Nowadays, something like this would cost at least $1.5 million. She smiled, revealing perfect teeth. "You made a smart investment." Aiden returned with the cheesecake he had bought on the way, and the conversation moved on to other topics. But I continued to observe her, noting how often she returned to the subject of real estate, how she asked seemingly innocent questions about the condition of the house, renovations, security systems. 6 months later, they were married. The wedding was lavish, not the kind my usually reserved son would have planned. I saw Simone's influence in this. 200 guests, most of whom were her colleagues and friends. I paid half the expenses, $50,000, even though no one asked me to. I wanted to do something for my son, to show that I supported his choice, despite my vague suspicions. After the wedding, everything changed. Aiden's visits became less frequent, first once every 2 weeks, then once a month, and then only on special occasions. There were always excuses: work, renovations in their new apartment, business trips. I didn't insist, understanding that they had their own lives. When they did come, I noticed changes in my son. He became quieter, avoided direct eye contact, and often checked his phone, as if waiting for a saving call that would allow them to leave. Sometimes he smelled of alcohol, even in the morning when they came for Sunday brunch. Simona, on the contrary, became more talkative, almost obsessive. She asked about my health, how I was coping with the house, whether it was too big for a single man. Are you sure you don't need a permanent helper? Cleaning, cooking, gardening? It's so tiring at your age, she said with feigned concern. I have a cleaner who comes twice a week. That's enough, I replied. Have you thought about moving to a smaller place? An apartment with a concierge, for example. No hassle with housekeeping, 24-hour security. I like my house, Simone, and I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. At moments like this, Aiden usually intervened, changing the subject, but I could see his shoulders tense up. It was as if he knew in advance what his wife was going to say, and it made him uncomfortable. By their third wedding anniversary, the situation had gotten even worse. Aiden now only called on holidays, and their visits could be counted on one hand. When I called him myself, Simone often answered the phone, explaining that he was busy or couldn't come to the phone. I felt like I was losing my son, but I didn't know how to fix the situation. On one of their rare visits, it was early fall, they came over for lunch. Aiden, would you show me? Aiden stayed in the dining room with a glass of whiskey, and I took Simone upstairs. She admired the wood paneling, the antique door handles, the moldings on the ceiling. But I noticed that her gaze was fixed not so much on beauty as on value. She was evaluating, not admiring. Is this your bedroom? She asked, peeking through the half-open door. Yes. May I? Without waiting for an answer, she stepped inside. Then we went down to the basement, where the boiler room, storage room, and my small wine collection were located. Amazing! Some of these bottles must be worth a fortune, she exclaimed, studying the labels. I agreed cautiously, without specifying that the total value of the collection exceeded $70,000. When we returned upstairs, Aiden was dozing in an armchair, an empty glass standing beside him. Simona gave him a disappointed look and turned to me. Penryn, may I ask you a question? Purely out of professional interest. Of course. When you bought the house, did you do any major renovations? Replace the wiring, pipes, reinforce the foundation? Yes, we spent about $200,000 on updating all the utilities. And you have all the renovation documents? Of course. I keep all the documentation. I'm not planning to sell, I cut her off. Of course, of course. Just food for thought. Soon they left. Simona cited an early meeting tomorrow, and Aiden was too sleepy to argue. As we said goodbye at the door, she suddenly said, By the way, Penryn, do you have a good security system? In a house like this, with valuable things? Adequate, I replied curtly. Maybe you should install something more modern. I know a great company. They do the whole package. Cameras, motion sensors, panic buttons. Aiden is so worried about you. I glanced at my son, but he was looking away, avoiding my gaze. Thanks for your concern, but I'm fine. When their car disappeared around the bend, I returned to the house with a heavy heart. Something wasn't right here. Simona wasn't just showing polite interest in her father-in-law's house. She was literally appraising the property. Her questions were too specific, too professional. I sat down in a chair in my office thinking. For 35 years, I had investigated financial crimes, uncovered fraud, and unraveled complex schemes. I was used to trusting my instincts, and now they were screaming danger. Aiden was changing before my eyes, becoming more and more distant, looking exhausted, avoiding direct communication with me. And then there was Simone's strange insistence, her interest in documents, the value of the house, security systems. I opened the safe and took out the folder with the house documents. Everything was in order. Then I checked the will. Most of my property, including the house, was to go to Aiden after my death. But perhaps Simone didn't want to wait. That night I couldn't sleep for a long time. I lay in the dark, replaying the details of the visit in my head, analyzing the behavior of my daughter-in-law and son. My intuition told me that I should be on my guard. Something told me that Simone saw me not as a relative, but as an obstacle, and I began to suspect that she was plotting something against me. After that visit, I decided to be more careful. Something told me that this was not just a family relationship, but something more dangerous. A few days later, Aiden called me himself, which had been rare lately. Dad, how about dinner this Friday? Simone is making lasagna from her grandmother's recipe. His voice sounded unnaturally cheerful. I agreed, although I was surprised. Usually their invitations were for the weekend, not on a weekday evening. On Friday, I visited them for the first time in several months. Their apartment was in a new residential complex on the outskirts of Ratlin. Sterile minimalism, glass surfaces, white walls. Nothing like the warmth and character of my Victorian home. Dinner was awkward. Aiden drank more than usual, and Simone was unusually attentive and caring. After dessert, she suddenly started talking about travel. Penryn, have you ever been on a cruise? No. Veronica dreamed of a Mediterranean cruise, but we never got around to it. See, Aiden, I told you so, she said, turning to her husband, who was staring at the bottom of his glass. Penryn, Aiden and I were thinking about a gift for your birthday. Remember you mentioned Veronica wanted to go on a cruise? My birthday was a month away, and I hadn't mentioned anything like that. But I nodded, deciding to see where she was going with this. We want to give you a cruise, a 2-week trip around the Mediterranean, all-inclusive, best cabin. That's very generous, I said, watching Aiden nervously twirl a fork in his hands. You've done so much for us. It's time we took care of you. Later, when Aiden left to make a work call, Simone brought up the house again. Don't worry about security while you're away. We'll keep an eye on the house. That's not necessary. I have a reliable alarm system and a housekeeper who comes in regularly. Oh, but that's not the same as having people in the house. Do you know how many burglaries happen when the owners are away? I promised to think about the cruise and their offer. As I was leaving, I saw Simone whisper something in Aiden's ear, and he nodded absently. The next day, I went to a travel agency to inquire about Mediterranean cruises. I wanted to understand exactly what Simone was planning. The consultant showed me several options, including a luxurious 2-week cruise departing in a month and 5 days. This is our most popular offer, but you need to book in advance. There are only a few cabins left. I thanked her and left without making a reservation. On the way home, I wondered, if Simone really plans to give me such a cruise, why hasn't she booked it yet? Why did she first ask if Veronica and I had been on a cruise, and then suddenly claim that I myself had mentioned Veronica's desire to go sailing? At home, I called my old friend Pascal Crosby. We met 40 years ago while investigating a series of financial frauds. He was a private investigator, and I was a forensic accountant. Since then, our paths have crossed many times professionally, and after retirement, we sometimes met to play chess and reminisce about old cases. Pascal, it's Penryn. We need to talk. We agreed to meet at a small cafe in the city center in an hour. Pascal, as fit and alert as ever, despite his 74 years, met me at the entrance. You look worried, old friend, he said as we sat down at a table in the corner. I told him everything. About Simone's strange behavior, her obsessive interest in my house, the sudden cruise offer, how my son had changed over the past 3 years. Do you think she's up to something with your house? Pascal asked, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. I'm sure of it, but I don't understand what exactly. Given her profession as a real estate appraiser, she may have found some kind of legal loophole. How much is your house worth now? According to the latest appraisal, about $1.5 million. That's a lot of money. And your son is the sole heir? Yes, everything will go to Aiden after I die. But Simone doesn't seem to want to wait. We need to find out what she's up to. We discussed a plan of action. Pascal suggested installing hidden cameras and listening devices in my house in case Simone came to look around while I was away. And it's worth finding out about her past. Something tells me this isn't the first time your daughter-in-law has done something like this. 2 days later, Pascal came to me with a small bag full of equipment. You haven't lost your touch, have you? I smiled, looking at the miniature cameras and microphones. Retirement is boring. Sometimes I take on private jobs, spousal infidelity, corporate espionage. Nothing serious, but I keep my skills sharp. We installed the devices in strategic locations: the living room, study, hallway, and basement. The cameras were so small that they were impossible to spot without special equipment. All recordings were transmitted to a secure server that only Pascal and I had access to. Now we wait. If she's really up to something, she'll definitely come here to check things out before you leave. We didn't have to wait long. 3 days after installing the cameras when I was at the supermarket, the security system sent me a notification about movement in the house. I immediately called Pascal and drove home, but decided not to go inside. We parked on a neighboring street and opened the camera feed on our tablet. Simone was standing in my office, methodically opening desk drawers and examining the bookshelves. Aiden was not with her. "What is she looking for?" Pascal whispered, although she obviously couldn't hear us. "Probably the house documents or the keys to the safe." Simone spent about an hour in the house, carefully examining every room, taking photos, looking in all the cupboards and drawers. Then she took out her phone and dialed a number. "Yes, I'm inside." Her voice was clearly audible through the microphones. "No, the old man isn't home. I took the spare key from Aiden. Yes, the place is perfect. It's worth at least $1.5 million, plus the antiques, the wine collection." "No, Aiden doesn't know the details. He thinks we're just looking after the house while his father's on a cruise. In a month and 5 days, we'll have 2 weeks. No, all the documents are in the safe, but I'll find a way to open it. Of course I know what I'm doing. We already did this with that old woman's house in Boston, remember? Yes, it's completely legal if you do the paperwork right." "Ha, he has no idea. He thinks I really love his son." "Okay, I have to go. I'll call you back later." I felt a cold rage rising inside me. So Simone wasn't just a greedy daughter-in-law. She was a professional con artist who had pulled off similar schemes before. "Did you write that down?" I asked Pascal. "Every word," he nodded. "But that's not enough for the police. We need concrete evidence of her intentions, documents confirming her previous scams." After Simone left, we went inside the house. I checked the safe. It was untouched. But I was bothered by the mention of that old woman's house in Boston. If Simone had already committed similar crimes, there might be records of it. "I'll check her background," Pascal said. "I still have connections with the Boston police." A few days later, he came back with a thick folder. "Simone Biles, née Phillips. She changed her last name 3 times. She worked at 6 different real estate agencies over the past 10 years. And here's what's interesting. In every city where she worked, there were strange stories involving the transfer of ownership of expensive real estate." Pascal showed me newspaper clippings and printouts of police reports. In Boston, an elderly widow lost her $2 million home when she went to visit her sister in Florida. In Providence, a retiree discovered that his country cottage was registered to a person he didn't know. In each case, there were indirect links to Simone, but no direct evidence. "She's smart," Pascal admitted. "She never leaves any traces, always finds legal loopholes." In 2 cases, the victims didn't even file police reports. They died shortly after losing their property. "Do you think it's a coincidence?" I felt a chill run down my spine. "It's hard to say. There were no signs of violent death. Both were elderly people with health problems. But the timing is alarming." We decided to continue our surveillance, but also to start preparing to counter her plans. If Simone was going to use my crews to take over my house, I had to set a trap. "We need to know exactly how she plans to do it," Pascal said, "so we can come up with an effective antidote." A week after Simone's visit to my house, Aiden called to officially offer me the cruise as a birthday present. "Simone and I have already booked everything, Dad," he said, sounding uncertain. "We're leaving in a month. We thought it would be a good way to celebrate your 77th birthday." I thanked him and agreed. I had to maintain the illusion that I didn't suspect anything. The next day, I accidentally ran into Simone near her office. She was surprised but quickly regained her composure. "Penryn, what a surprise! What are you doing here?" "I was nearby and decided to stop by to thank you for the gift. The cruise is very generous." "Don't mention it. You deserve a vacation." I deliberately brought up the subject of the house to see her reaction. "I don't think you need to worry about the house while I'm away. I have a good alarm system, and the neighbors will keep an eye on it." "Oh no, Aiden and I insist," she smiled softly. "A house as valuable as this can't be left unattended. We'll drop by regularly to check that everything is okay." "Are you sure it won't be an inconvenience? 2 weeks is a long time." "No problem at all. We were even thinking of staying there for a few days. We're having our bathroom renovated, and it would be convenient to stay with you a couple of times." There it was, her intention to move into my house while I was away. I pretended to think about her words, then nodded. If it's more convenient for you, why not? Aiden has the keys. Wonderful, you won't regret it, I promise. When I told Pascal about this conversation, he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. She's going to use her physical presence in your house as part of her scheme. She may be planning to forge documents showing that you sold or gifted her the house before you left. But that's absurd. Any lawyer would see through the forgery. Don't forget, she's a professional real estate appraiser. She has access to notaries and lawyers. If the documents look convincing enough, and she physically owns the house, it will be difficult to prove otherwise. We began to develop a plan. Pascal suggested following Simone to find out who she was meeting with and who her accomplices were. I began to study the legal aspects of real estate ownership, looking for potential loopholes she could use. After several days of surveillance, Pascal noticed that Simone regularly met with a man who, as it turned out, was a notary with a dubious reputation. Another of her contacts was a woman who worked in the city administration, in the department responsible for registering property rights. This is how she does it, Pascal said, showing me photos of these meetings. The forged documents are certified by a dishonest notary, then quickly registered with the help of connections. By the time you return from your cruise, the house will no longer legally be yours. And what can we do? Set a trap, Pascal smiled mysteriously. You're a financial expert. I think we can create a legal structure around your house that will prevent any manipulation. We spent several days consulting with a trusted lawyer and developing a plan. By the time we left for the cruise, everything was ready. The house was legally protected, the trap was set, and the cameras were set up. On the day of departure, Aiden and Simone came to see me off. She was extremely kind, helped with the suitcases, and gave advice on sea travel. Aiden looked tense but tried to smile. It hurt me to see that my son, without realizing it, had become an accomplice in his wife's scheme. Enjoy your vacation, Penryn, Simone said, kissing me on the cheek. Don't worry about a thing. We'll take care of everything. I'm sure you will, I replied, looking her straight in the eye. As the taxi drove away, I saw in the rearview mirror that she was taking out her phone and dialing a number. I was sure she was calling her accomplices to let them know that the operation had begun. But she didn't know that I had also begun my operation, and that in this game, I had the advantage. I knew exactly what she was up to. The warm Mediterranean breeze ruffled my gray hair as I stood on the deck of the cruise ship Odyssey, watching the port of Barcelona gradually disappear over the horizon. Around me, retired couples were snapping photos, admiring the views and raising glasses of champagne. It was just like the brochures the travel agent had shown me. My cabin was exactly as Simone had promised, spacious, with a balcony and a view of the sea. A 2-week cruise around the Mediterranean with stops in Marseille, Genoa, Rome, Athens, and other cities. It seemed like the perfect gift from caring relatives. If not for one, but. On the evening of the first day, I took several photos of the sunset over the sea and sent them to Aiden with a message. Stunning views. Thank you for the gift. I ordered a bottle of wine to my cabin, had dinner, and watched the entertainment program in the main lounge. I did everything an elderly gentleman enjoying a well-deserved vacation should do. On the morning of the second day, I went to breakfast, visited the pool, and even signed up for an excursion in Marseille. And then I quietly left the ship with a group going ashore. Only unlike the other tourists, I had no plans to return. Pascal was waiting for me at the port with a rental car. Everything ready? I asked, climbing into the passenger seat. The plane to Boston leaves in 3 hours, he nodded. How did the first part of the operation go? I think Simone already thinks I'm sailing the Mediterranean. I sent her messages with photos. What's the situation at home? Quiet so far, but the surveillance cameras are working and the alarm is set to my phone. If anyone enters the house, we'll know immediately. We arrived at the Marseille airport, and a few hours later I was flying home. It wasn't the most convenient route, with layovers in London and New York, but I couldn't risk a direct flight where I might run into someone I knew. The next day I was in Boston, staying at an inconspicuous hotel in the suburbs. Pascal met me there. He had flown in on a different flight so as not to attract attention. Nothing new, he reported when we settled into his hotel room with a laptop showing images from the cameras in my house. But I don't think we'll have to wait long. He was right. On the 4th day of my official cruise, the cameras picked up movement at the front door. Simone entered the house, looked around, and went back out. Half an hour later, she returned with Aiden. They slowly walked around the first floor. Someone was saying something, gesturing animatedly, pointing at the walls and furniture. Aiden looked uncertain, nodding frequently and glancing around nervously, as if he expected me to suddenly come out of one of the rooms. She's showing him what she's going to do with the house, Pascal remarked. Look at her gestures. It's as if she's already planning the renovation. They left an hour later without doing anything suspicious. On the fifth day, the same thing happened. A short visit, a tour of the house, no active action. She's waiting, I suggested, making sure I'm really far away. On the sixth day, everything changed. The surveillance cameras recorded a truck stopping near my house. 4 men in furniture company uniforms got out of it. Simone met them at the entrance. It's starting. Pascal moved his laptop closer. She's moving in with you. For the next 2 hours, we watched as movers carried furniture and boxes into my house. A large bed, a sofa, tables, chairs, all new, modern, completely out of place with the Victorian style of my house. She's completely changing the decor, I muttered. Where's all my furniture? From what we've been able to find out, your things were taken away last night when there were few people in the area. Pascal showed me photos of another company's night truck, taken with a hidden camera. It looks like she's following a well-established pattern. Our trip to Boston was no accident. It was here that Pascal had connections in the police force, who helped us uncover details about Simone's past scams. One of the retirees who worked in the police department's archives gave us access to old cases. That's how we discovered a pattern. Elderly people living in expensive homes, unexpected gifts, or sales of real estate at below-market prices, and always the same detail, a complete change in the home's interior. She destroys all traces of the previous owner, the police officer explained at the time. It creates the impression that the move was planned and voluntary. In addition, the notary has arrived. Pascal took several screenshots. She's going to draw up the documents now. The internal cameras showed Simone, Aiden, and the notary sitting in my office. Simone opened her briefcase and took out a folder with documents. Even through the screen, you could see how tense Aiden was. He sat with his shoulders slumped, pale, with beads of sweat on his forehead. Everything is ready, Robert, Simone's voice sounded confident. The documents for the transfer of ownership, the deed of gift from Penryn Drummond, all notarized copies of his passport and other identification documents. What about witnesses? Kane asked, looking through the papers. You need witnesses for a transaction like this. Aiden is here as his father's son and trustee, and Melissa will be here in 20 minutes. Simone pointed to my son, who looked like he was about to throw up. Simona, I'm not sure, Aiden began. We've already discussed this, she cut him off. Your father himself suggested transferring the house to us. He wants us to take care of him in his old age, and in return, he's transferring ownership to us. It's all fair and legal. But why now? Why can't we wait until he gets back? Because a man his age can change his mind at any moment. Right now, he's in a good mood, enjoying his vacation, grateful to us for the cruise. It's the perfect time to close the deal, she said, turning her gaze to the notary. Besides, we have a notarized power of attorney allowing Aiden to act on his father's behalf. I felt the blood boiling in my veins. All the documents were forged. I never gave Aiden power of attorney, never offered to transfer the house to them. And my son seemed to understand this, but he was too weak to resist his domineering wife. This is outrageous, I muttered, staring at the screen. But predictable, Pascal remarked. We knew she would go this route. 20 minutes later, as Simone had promised, a middle-aged woman appeared, the same city official she had met with earlier. Melissa, thank you for coming. Simone hugged her like an old friend. Everything is ready. We just need a second witness. No problem, Melissa smiled. You know I'm always happy to help. For the next half hour, we watched as they signed the documents. Kane affixed the notary seals, and Aiden hesitantly signed where Simone indicated. My son looked like a man signing a deal with the devil, knowing he was making a mistake, but unable to stop himself. When the formalities were over, Simone took out a bottle of champagne. To our new home, she proclaimed, pouring the drink into glasses, and to Penryn's generosity, of course. Aiden barely sipped his champagne, then excused himself and left. The camera in the hallway showed him leaning against the wall, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath, as if trying to control nausea or dizziness. Your son isn't very happy, Pascal remarked. He understands that something is wrong, but he's too weak to stand up to Simone. After the notary and Melissa left, Simone began to actively settle in. She rearranged the furniture, hung her paintings, and laid out her personal belongings. Aiden followed her around, periodically trying to object. Maybe you shouldn't throw away that vase. It belonged to my mother. Darling, it's awful. It doesn't fit in with our new interior at all, Simone dismissed him. What about my father's things? His collections? His books? We'll send him whatever he wants to the nursing home. We'll sell the rest. Why keep all this junk? By evening, Simone had completely settled in. She called in another team of workers who began taking pictures off the walls and removing the remaining furniture that she deemed unsuitable for her new home. I can't watch this. I turned away from the screen. She's destroying everything Veronica and I have built over the years. Hang in there. Pascal put his hand on my shoulder. We'll put an end to this soon, but first let her show her hand. On the 7th day of my official cruise, Simone brought an interior designer to the house. They walked through the rooms, discussing which walls to knock down, where to put modern furniture, how to redesign the kitchen. I want to get rid of this Victorian style completely, she said. More light, minimalism, modern technology. The designer nodded in agreement, taking notes and photos. Aiden sat in the living room with a bottle of whiskey, staring blankly into space. He no longer tried to argue, just watched as his wife methodically destroyed what remained of his childhood and family heritage. That evening, Simone decided to take a closer look at my study. She began searching for the safe I had mentioned during her tour of the house. Where is this damn safe? She muttered, tapping the walls and moving the bookshelves. Finally, she found it, hidden behind a painting, just as I had said. But when she tried to open it using some tools she had brought with her, she was disappointed. It's empty, she exclaimed when the door finally gave way. Where are all the documents? Where are the valuables? She feverishly examined the empty safe, unable to believe her eyes. Then she began to methodically search the entire office, emptying the contents of the desk drawers, checking the books, feeling the walls in search of other hiding places. Damn old man, she cursed when her search proved fruitless. He suspected something. Her next target was the basement, where my wine collection was stored, but there too she was disappointed. The shelves were empty. Where's all the wine? She shouted, turning to Aiden, who had hesitantly followed her downstairs. You said there was a collection worth $70,000 here. There was, Aiden muttered. Maybe he sold it before he left? He couldn't have sold a collection like that in a few days. He knows something, Aiden. Your father suspected something. She rushed around the basement, examining the empty shelves, as if hoping the bottles would magically reappear. Then she stopped abruptly, as if struck by a sudden thought. The family jewels. Where did he keep your mother's jewelry? Aiden reluctantly led her to the bedroom, where a small box was hidden in the closet. Simone grabbed it, eagerly opened it, and froze. It's empty, she whispered. It's all empty. Her face contorted with rage. She threw the box on the floor and turned to Aiden. Your father hid everything. He knew we were coming. Maybe he just took the valuables with him, or put them in a bank deposit box before his long trip. Aiden tried to calm his wife down, but his voice sounded relieved, as if he was glad that Simone's plan was falling apart. Don't be an idiot. He did it on purpose. But it doesn't change anything. The house is still ours. The documents are signed and registered. The jewelry would have just been a bonus. Simone spent the rest of the day searching restlessly, checking every corner, every potential hiding place. But to no avail, all the valuables, documents, art, and collections were safely hidden in a bank vault that Pascal and I had rented a week before my departure. On the 8th day of my cruise, when Simone was sure she had checked the entire house, she called in a team of builders to assess the upcoming repairs. They walked around the house with instruments, measuring walls and ceilings and taking notes. And that's when my trap worked. One of the builders, checking the condition of the walls in the hall, discovered a small metal plate embedded in the wall next to the staircase. It was almost invisible, usually covered by a decorative panel that I had deliberately removed before leaving. What's this? The builder asked, showing his find to Simone. She came closer, examining the metal plate with the inscription engraved on it. I saw on the cameras how her face paled when she read the text. What does it say? Aiden came closer. Simone didn't answer, frantically pulling out her phone. She dialed the number and stepped aside so the builders couldn't hear the conversation. Robert, we have a problem. The house has been transferred to an irrevocable trust. There's a plate here with an official notice. Yes, it's dated 3 weeks ago. No, I had no idea. What do you mean, it changes everything? We've already registered the documents. How is it illegal? You said everything was fine. She spoke louder and louder, unable to hide her irritation. Aiden watched her with growing concern. Finally, she ended the call and turned to the builders. Lunch break, guys. Be back in an hour. When the workers left, she turned to Aiden. Your father transferred the house to an irrevocable trust 3 weeks ago. That means he is no longer the direct owner of the house. It is managed by a trust with special conditions. Our documents are invalid. What? Aiden looked confused. But how? Why would he do that? Because he knew. Simone slammed her fist against the wall. He knew about our plans and prepared for them. That metal plate is an official notice that must be posted on property transferred to a trust of this type by law. But if the documents are invalid, then we've committed attempted fraud. She slumped down on the steps, covering her face with her hands. If your father reports it to the police, we'll both be arrested. Aiden leaned against the wall, stunned by the news. I told you this was a bad idea. I told you from the start. Shut up, Simone snapped. I need to think. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Simone flinched and exchanged glances with Aiden. Fear was written all over their faces. They clearly thought it might be the police. Aiden approached the door uncertainly and opened it. A courier was standing on the doorstep with a large envelope. Delivery for Simone Drummond Bailey, he said. Sign here, please. Simona approached, signed, and took the envelope. As soon as the courier left, she tore open the package. Inside was a folder with documents and a short note. I couldn't see the text of the note on the cameras, but Simona's reaction spoke for itself. She turned even paler, her hands shaking. What is it? Aiden asked. He knows everything, Simone whispered. Your father knows about Boston, about Providence, about everything. She handed him the folder. As Aiden looked through the documents, his face changed. Shock, disbelief, then anger. What is this? His voice sounded broken. What is the old woman's house in Boston? What is he writing about? Simone didn't have time to answer. At that moment, the front door opened, and Pascal and I appeared on the threshold. Oh, hi, I said, entering my house. Didn't expect me back so soon? A moment of absolute silence hung in the hall of my own home. Simone stood frozen with her mouth open, pale as a sheet. Aiden looked as if he had seen a ghost. His hands were shaking as he held the folder with the documents. Pascal stood next to me, his face impassive, but his eyes revealed the satisfaction of a man whose plan had worked perfectly. Dad? Aiden finally managed to say. You're supposed to be in Rome. I am, I nodded, taking off my coat. But I decided my home needed me more than the Colosseum. Simone quickly regained her composure. She straightened up and put on a fake smile. Penryn! What a surprise! She stepped forward as if to hug me, but I stopped her with a gesture. We were so worried. Why did you come back without warning? Did something happen on the cruise? The cruise is going ahead as planned. I just decided it would be better to spend my time here. I looked around the hall, noting the changes she had already made. I see you've settled in. Aiden looked back and forth between me and my wife, confused. The folder of documents in his hands trembled slightly. Shall we sit down? I suggested, pointing to the living room. We have a lot to discuss. We walked into the room, which just a week ago had been a cozy living room with antique furniture, and now had been transformed into something faceless with trendy sofas and abstract paintings on the walls. Interesting design, I remarked, sitting down in an armchair. The only piece of furniture they hadn't had time to replace yet. Simone sat opposite me, her back straight, her hands folded on her knees, the embodiment of confidence and innocence. Aiden sat awkwardly next to her, still holding the folder. Pascal remained standing by the door, a silent guard. Penryn, let me explain, Simone began. We just wanted to surprise you. Renovate the interior while you were away. A fresh look at your beautiful home. Don't bother, Simone. I raised my hand, stopping the flow of lies. I know everything. What exactly do you know? Her voice remained steady, but fear flashed in her eyes. Instead of answering, I took a small remote control from my jacket's inside pocket and pressed a button. The TV on the wall came to life, showing footage from my hidden cameras. On the screen, Simone was talking to notary Robert Kane in my office. The documents transferring ownership, the deed of gift from Penryn Drummond, all notarized copies of his passport and other identification. I pressed pause. Interesting, isn't it? Especially considering that I never signed those documents. Aiden let out a quiet groan and covered his face with his hands. Simone didn't give up. It's a misunderstanding. Why can't we wait until he comes back? And Simone's answer, because a man his age can change his mind at any moment. Right now, he's in a good mood, enjoying his vacation, grateful to us for the cruise. It's the perfect time to close the deal. I turned off the TV and turned to her. Still want to talk about a misunderstanding? Simone straightened up even more, if that was possible. Her eyes narrowed and her voice turned cold. The recording was made illegally. It's a violation of privacy. My house, my rules, I parried. Besides, the court usually makes exceptions when it comes to preventing crime. And attempting to defraud us out of $1.5 million in real estate is definitely a crime. Aiden raised his head, his face contorted with pain and confusion. Dad, I didn't know. Simone said you really wanted to give us the house. And you believed her? I looked at my son bitterly. After 45 years, you know me so poorly? He faltered, unable to find the words. Simone stood up abruptly. Fine. You're back. You're unhappy with what we've done. We accept that. Just tell us what you want, and we'll resolve this like civilized people. I smirked. First you try to steal my house, and now you're offering to resolve the issue civilized? Interesting approach. We didn't try to steal it. Sit down, Simone. My voice became harsh. I'm not finished yet. To my surprise, she obeyed. I turned to Pascal. Show them the rest. My old friend went to the TV, connected his laptop, and displayed the new material on the screen. Photos of Simone meeting with Notary Kane and a city administration employee. Copies of police reports from Boston and Providence. Newspaper articles about elderly people who had strangely lost their homes. We did a little investigating, I explained, and we found an interesting pattern. Everywhere you've worked, Simone, there have been remarkable coincidences. I nodded to Pascal, and he took another folder out of his bag, a twin to the one Aiden was holding. Here are copies of the documents you tried to file on my house, and also a detailed report from a handwriting expert on how my signatures were forged. And most interestingly, the results of an examination showing that the forgery technique is identical to that used in the case of Eleanor Pratt of Boston. Do you remember her? The 80-year-old widow who gifted her $2 million house to a certain Sandra Phillips? Who, amazingly, looks exactly like you, only with brown hair instead of blonde. Simone's face finally flinched. She glanced quickly at the door, as if assessing her chances of escape. Don't bother, Pascal shook his head. I have good reflexes for my age. Aiden, shaken, leafed through the documents in the folder. Simone? His voice trembled. What is this? Who is Sandra Phillips? She ignored his question, turning to me. What do you want? Money? I can return everything I took from the house. You didn't take anything. I allowed myself a slight smile. All the valuables, documents, collections, everything is in a safe place. I took care of it before we left. Then what? She leaned forward. Everything can be resolved. I'll pay for the damage we caused to the house. Aiden and I will leave, and you'll never see us again. Dad, Aiden looked up from the documents. Is this true? All of this? He shook the folder. I nodded. I'm afraid so, son. Your wife is a professional con artist. She specializes in elderly people with expensive real estate. Simone turned sharply to him. Don't listen to him. He's just taking revenge because you chose me over him. He always wanted to control you, can't you see? But the documents... Aiden looked lost. They're easy to forge, she snapped. Your father is an expert in fraud. He could have fabricated all of this to separate us. I nodded to Pascal again, and he brought up a new recording. In it, Simone was talking on the phone in my house. Yes, I'm inside. No, the old man isn't home. I took the spare key from Aiden. Yes, the place is perfect. It's worth at least $1.5 million, plus antiques, wine collection. No, Aiden doesn't know the details. He thinks we're just house-sitting while his father's on a cruise. And then the most devastating sentence. Of course I know what I'm doing. We already did this with that old woman's house in Boston, remember? Yes, it's completely legal if you do the paperwork right. Huh, he has no idea. He thinks I really love his son. Aiden made a sound like a sob. He looked at Simone as if he were seeing her for the first time. You used me? He whispered. Simone realized the game was over. Her face changed. The mask of the loving wife slipped away, revealing cold calculation. You were an easy target, she said contemptuously. Lonely, insecure, always seeking daddy's approval, and with access to wealth. Aiden flinched as if she had struck him. I slowly got up and walked over to the fireplace, the only element of the interior that Simone hadn't yet changed. Veronica's portrait still hung above it. Do you know what's most interesting about my trap, Simone? I turned to her. Not the hidden cameras, not the documents about your past, not even the recordings of your conversations. The real trap is illegal. I moved the portrait aside to reveal a small metal plate, an exact replica of the one the builders had found in the hall. 3 weeks ago, I transferred this house to an irrevocable trust, I said slowly, savoring every word. Do you know what that means? It means that the house no longer belongs to you directly, she hissed through clenched teeth. It is managed by a trust with certain conditions. I know what a trust is, old man. Good. Then you understand that all your fake transfer of ownership documents, all your shenanigans with the notary, all of it is completely useless. I am no longer the direct owner of the house, so I cannot sell or give it away, even if I wanted to. That can be challenged, she began to think feverishly. The trust was created recently. The court may declare it invalid. Theoretically, yes, I nodded. But there's a catch. The terms of this trust are such that the sole beneficiary is an educational foundation named after my late wife. The house will pass to the foundation after my death and will be converted into a learning center. Courts are extremely reluctant to interfere in charitable trusts, especially those related to education. But Aiden is your son. He was supposed to be the heir, she exclaimed. He will receive other assets. I looked at my son. He no longer needs the house. Aiden raised his head, tears in his eyes. I never wanted your house, Dad. I don't know how I could have been so blind. Simone jumped up, her face contorted with anger. You can't just get rid of me like that. I have connections. I know people. Pascal silently handed her another document. She snatched it, scanned it, and turned even paler. This is a search warrant for your apartment, I explained. Issued this morning by Judge Hollister. Pascal has kept many useful contacts in the police. Right now, detectives are examining your computer, phone records, bank accounts. You can't prove. We've already proven enough, I pointed to the screen, where the recording of her conversation was still visible. Admission of fraud, mention of previous crimes, intent to commit a new one. The forged documents for my house are just the icing on the cake. Simona slumped back into her chair. For the first time since our conversation began, she looked truly defeated. Her shoulders slumped. The mask of confidence finally slipped away, revealing a frightened woman backed into a corner. What now? She asked quietly. That's up to you, I said, sitting down opposite her. I have two options. I took another envelope out of my pocket and placed it on the table between us. Option 1, I hand over all the evidence to the police. Given your previous scams, which will now also be investigated, you face 5 to 10 years in prison. Real estate fraud is a serious crime. Aiden let out a quiet groan. Option 2? Simone stared intently at the envelope. I opened it and took out a document. Agreement of divorce. You sign it today, waive all claims to Aiden's or my property, and admit that you entered into the marriage with fraudulent intent. In exchange, I will not press charges. You will leave Ratlin and never contact me or my son again. Simona studied the document, her legal experience allowing her to assess its flawlessness. You've thought of everything, she said finally. I had plenty of time on the cruise. I allowed myself a slight smile. What if I refuse to sign? Then we move on to option 1, I shrugged. Police, court, prison. And believe me, with my connections and reputation, with the evidence we have, the sentence will be as harsh as possible. She was silent, weighing her options. Aiden suddenly stood up and walked over to her. Just sign it, Simone. Get it over with. She looked at him with contempt. Even now, you're such a weakling. Maybe, he agreed, but I'm not your weakling anymore. That seemed to hurt her more than all the legal threats. She snatched the document from my hands, took the pen Pascal handed her, and quickly signed all the copies. Happy? She threw the pen on the table. Almost, I nodded to Pascal, and he took a small tape recorder out of his bag. Now say for the record, I, Simone Bayless, voluntarily sign the divorce agreement and waive all claims to the property of Aiden and Penryn Drummond. She repeated the phrase through clenched teeth, but clearly and distinctly. Excellent. I gathered the documents. Now you can go. You have 24 hours to leave Rutland. If you are still in town in a day, I will hand over all the materials to the police, despite our agreement. Simona stood up, her head held high. You think you've won, old man? But remember, there are many like me. Next time, you may not be so lucky. Next time, I'll be even better prepared, I replied calmly. She turned to Aiden. And you'll never find a woman who will love such a pathetic, weak-willed... Enough, I interrupted her. Get out of my house. Simone gave the three of us one last contemptuous look and headed for the exit. At the door, she turned around. You'll regret this. With that, she disappeared, slamming the door so hard that the glass rattled. Silence fell. Aiden stood in the middle of the room, shoulders slumped, staring at the closed door. Pascal began to pack up the equipment, tactfully giving my son and me a chance to talk alone. I'll call you later, he said, shaking my hand. When we were alone, Aiden finally looked at me. Dad, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, I said, walking over to him and hugging my son for the first time in many years. After Pascal left, a heavy silence hung in the house. Aiden sat in a chair, slumped over, staring at his hands. I watched my son, trying to figure out his thoughts. What was he feeling right now? Shame? Guilt? Relief? Would you like a drink? I asked, heading for the bar, which Simone hadn't yet had time to completely remodel. Aiden nodded without looking up. I poured 2 glasses of whiskey, a 20-year-old vintage that I had been saving for special occasions. If exposing my daughter-in-law as a fraud didn't qualify as a special occasion, I didn't know what did. I handed my son a glass and sat down across from him. He took a big sip and grimaced at the strength of the drink. She's not coming back, is she? He finally said. No, Simone is too smart to risk going to prison. The documents she signed are legally flawless. Aiden fell silent again, twirling the glass in his hands. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he looked me straight in the eye. How long have you known? I took a sip of whiskey, thinking about my answer. I've had my suspicions for a long time, ever since she started showing an unusual interest in my house, but I only got concrete proof just before I left. And all this time, all these cameras, surveillance, investigations, didn't you ever think to talk to me? His voice sounded hurt, which I had expected, but I answered honestly, no, I didn't. Why? He slammed his glass on the table, spilling some whiskey. I'm your son. You could have just told me you suspected Simone. And what would you have done? Believed me? I shook my head. Aiden, for the last 3 years, you've looked at me like I'm some annoying old man you tolerate out of a sense of duty. You avoided meetings, kept quiet when you came. Let Simone speak for you. What do you think would have happened if I had come to you and said, your wife is a professional con artist who wants to steal my house? Aiden opened his mouth to argue, but then closed it, realizing I was right. I wouldn't have believed you, he admitted quietly. I would have thought you were jealous or trying to control my life. Exactly. I needed irrefutable evidence, not just for the police or the court, but for you. We sat in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. It was getting dark outside, but neither of us got up to turn on the light. In the dim light, my son's face looked older, the lines around his mouth deeper, traces of 3 years of living with a woman who saw him only as a tool to achieve her goals. You know what the worst part is? Aiden said suddenly. Part of me always knew something was wrong, from the very beginning. Why didn't you ever talk about it? Because she made me feel special, he said with a bitter smile. A beautiful, confident woman chose me, an ordinary, boring tax inspector, When that happens, you start to ignore the warning signs. I nodded in understanding. Human psychology is predictable. We see what we want to see and close our eyes to everything else. I should have trusted my instincts, Aiden continued, but I was afraid of being alone. After my mother, you withdrew into yourself, into your work, and I needed someone. And when Simone came along, she filled the void, I finished for him. Yes, he finished his whiskey in one gulp. God, how blind I was. I wanted to say that I understood him, that many would have done the same in his place, but I didn't have time. The front door burst open and Simone flew into the living room. Her perfect hairstyle was disheveled, her eyes burned with rage. Her breathing was rapid and uneven, as if she had been running. "How dare you!" she shouted, pointing her finger at me. "You old schemer!" I calmly put my glass on the table and sat up straight in my chair. "I thought we had already said goodbye, Simone." "Goodbye? Do you think it's that simple?" She turned her gaze to Aiden. "And you, just sitting here drinking with him, after everything I've done for you?" Aiden looked stunned by her appearance. He stood up but remained where he was, as if unsure whether to approach her or stay away. "Simona, please don't make this difficult. Just leave." His voice sounded tired. "Don't make it difficult." She laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. "Your father ruined our lives, and you're telling me not to make things difficult?" I stood up too, sensing that the situation was about to get out of control. "You ruined your own life, Simone, when you decided to use my son for your schemes. I just revealed the truth." She turned to me, and I saw such hatred in her eyes that I involuntarily took a step back. "The truth? You want the truth, old man?" Simone took a step closer. "The truth is that your son never loved you. He was afraid of you, resented your control, your constant lectures. He told me how you always made him feel inadequate, not smart enough." I felt something tighten in my chest. Did Aiden really say that? "Don't listen to her, Dad." Aiden stepped between us. "She's lying." "Lying?" Simone crossed her arms over her chest. "Tell him, Aiden. Tell him how you used to get drunk and cry about never being able to live up to his expectations. How you hated him for always being so successful, so perfect, while you felt like a failure." Aiden turned pale. I realized there was some truth in her words, and it hurt more than I expected. "Enough," I said firmly. "Your manipulations don't work anymore. Get out of my house or I'll call the police." "The police?" She laughed again. "You think I'm afraid of the police? I have connections you can't even imagine, and evidence you don't even suspect." "What other evidence?" I tried to stay calm, but I could feel myself getting angry. "About your own schemes, of course." She took a flash drive out of her bag. 35 years as a forensic accountant. All those investigations, all those caught fraudsters. Has anyone ever checked your own finances, Penryn? I froze. What was she talking about? "I did a little investigating," Simone continued with a triumphant smile. "Found some interesting transactions. Strange transfers from confiscated assets, unexplained deposits into offshore accounts. Coincidence? Or, this is nonsense," I snapped. "I've always acted strictly according to the law." "Really? Then you have nothing to fear if these documents fall into the hands of federal agents." She waved the flash drive. "Or to the press. Imagine the headlines. Renowned financial crime expert turns out to be a fraudster himself." I felt the blood drain from my face. Of course, I knew it was a bluff. My finances had always been crystal clear. But the mere accusation could trigger an investigation, tarnishing the reputation I had built over decades. "You're bluffing," I said, but there was a note of uncertainty in my voice. "Want to test it?" She raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe we can come to an agreement. You drop your accusations, destroy all the evidence against me, and I'll forget about this flash drive. Plus, of course, decent compensation for moral damages." Aiden shifted his gaze from me to Simone, clearly confused by this new turn of events. "Dad, is this true? You?" "No!" I raised my voice. "Of course not. She's trying to manipulate you, both of us." "It's so easy to accuse me of manipulation." Simone shook her head. "But which one of us installed hidden cameras? Who was watching, spying, gathering dirt? Who set the trap to destroy our marriage? I could see Aiden wavering. Despite all the evidence, despite Simone's own confession, part of him still wanted to believe the woman he loved. "Don't give in, son," I said quietly. "You've already seen who she really is." "Oh, yes, listen to Daddy," Simone mimicked. "Always listen to Daddy. He knows best. He always knows best." She turned to me. "You know what's funny, Penryn? I really was going to take your house, but not because I needed the money. I wanted to punish you for how you treated your son, for all these years of pressure, criticism, for never allowing him to be himself." "You're lying," I stepped toward her. "You did the same thing to other elderly people. It's your business, your scheme." "Maybe," she shrugged, "but in your case, it was personal. Aiden deserves happiness. He deserves someone who truly cares for him, not someone who uses him as an extension of their ambitions." I felt anger rising inside me. Not only had this woman tried to steal my home, but now she was trying to take on the role of my son's protector. "If you care so much about him, why did you use him for your schemes? Why did you lie to him?" "Because it was the only way to give him what he deserves," she shouted. "Do you think he would have been happy knowing that I was planning to take the house away from his precious father? No. He needed to think that everything was happening correctly, legally. So yes, I lied, to protect him." Aiden looked completely lost. He took a step toward Simone but stopped, as if he didn't trust his own instincts. "I don't know what to believe," he whispered. "Believe your eyes." I pointed to the TV where the scene of Simone talking on the phone was still frozen. "Believe your ears. You heard her say she was using you, that she didn't love you." "People say things when they're angry," Simone countered. "Have you ever said anything you regretted, Penryn?" She turned to Aiden, her voice softening. "I love you, Aiden. I always have. Yes, I planned to take your father's house. Yes, I used underhanded methods. But I did it for us, for our future. You and I could be happy here, without his shadow hanging over us." I saw my son hesitate, part of him wanting to believe her, and at that moment I knew what I had to do. "Okay, Simone." I took a step forward. "Let's test your words. If you really love Aiden, if all this was for him and not for the money, prove it." She narrowed her eyes, looking at me suspiciously. "How?" "Simple. Forget about the house, the compensation, your threats with the flash drive. Leave here with Aiden, start a new life together, without all these complications." "Think about it, Aiden," I continued. "If she loves you for who you are, and not for access to my money, she'll agree to leave here with you, forgetting about the house, the compensation, all the material things." Simone nervously licked her lips. "It's a trick. He's trying to divide us." "Maybe," I shrugged. "But if your love is real, what does it matter? Leave together, start with a clean slate. Without me, without my money, without my house." Aiden finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "He's right, Simone. If you really love me, it shouldn't matter. We can start over, together." Simone looked at him for a long second, then turned her gaze to me. I could see her mind working, calculating the options, weighing the losses and gains. "Of course I love you," she said finally. And he took that away from us with his dirty tricks, his surveillance, his traps." I saw Aiden's eyes widen as he finally saw the truth. In her anger, Simone revealed her true motives. Not love for him, but greed, a desire to get my house and my money. "So that's what this is about," he said quietly. "It was always about money." "Don't be naive," she snorted. "Of course it's about money. In this world, everything always comes down to money. But that doesn't mean I didn't love you. It's just, we could have had more. So much more." Aiden shook his head, stepping away from her. "I was such an idiot." "No, Aiden, listen." She stepped toward him, her tone softening again. "That's not what I meant. Of course I love you. It's just that this house could have been our family home, a place where we could raise our children." "Stop!" He raised his hand, stopping her. "Just stop lying. At least be honest now." Simone froze, staring at him. Then her face changed, the mask of the loving wife finally slipping away, revealing a cold, calculating mind. "Fine," she said finally. "You want honesty? Here it is. Yes, I planned to take your father's house. And yes, I used you to do it. You were convenient, weak, easily manipulated, the perfect tool. I saw every her words hit Aiden like a physical blow, but he stood straight, accepting this bitter truth. But you know what's funny? Simone continued with a cruel smile. Part of me actually started to have feelings for you. Not love, no, but something like affection, like for a loyal dog. Aiden flinched but didn't look away. Get out, he said quietly. Get out and never come back. Simone looked at him for a long second, then turned her gaze to me. Congratulations, old man. You won. But remember, I'm not the only one in this business. Next time, you may not be so lucky. With that, she turned and headed for the door. But she stopped at the threshold and turned back. Oh yes, one more thing. The flash drive is empty. I don't have any compromising material on you. But admit it, you were scared for a second, weren't you? For a second, you felt what it's like when someone else holds your fate in their hands. With that, she disappeared, leaving Aiden and me standing in the middle of the living room, which she had managed to change beyond recognition. My son slowly sank into a chair, his shoulders slumped as if all the energy had suddenly left his body. I'm such a fool, he whispered. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder. No, you're just a man who wanted to be loved. Aiden looked up, his eyes filled with tears. Do you think she ever loved me? Even a little? I could have lied and said yes, of course. Surely part of her had felt something. But after all the lies we had already been through, the truth seemed like the only right choice. No, son, I don't think she's capable of true love. He nodded, accepting the answer, and we fell silent, digesting everything that had happened. The week after Simone's exposure passed in a strange lull, Aiden moved into my house. Temporarily, he said. We hardly talked about what had happened, as if we had tacitly agreed to give each other time to process it. He helped return the furniture and belongings we had managed to hide before my departure, working silently beside me, restoring the house to its usual appearance. Every evening I saw him checking his phone, as if waiting for a message or call from Simone, but the phone remained silent. According to Pascal, she had rented a room in a motel on the outskirts of town and had not taken any action yet. On the 8th day at breakfast, Aiden finally broke our silence about the main issue. I talked to Simone yesterday. I put down the newspaper I was reading and looked closely at my son. And what did she say? She wants to meet, to talk, to explain, he said without looking up from his plate. She said there are things I need to know. About her, about you, about everything that happened. I felt a wave of anxiety rise inside me. Had Simone not given up? Was she still trying to manipulate my son? And what did you say? That I'd think about it. Aiden finally looked at me. That I needed to talk to you first. I was surprised. After so many years of strained relations, after all the unspoken words and alienation, my son was finally turning to me for advice. I think you know my opinion, I said cautiously. That woman is a professional manipulator. Everything she says will be aimed at regaining control over you. Aiden nodded, but I saw doubt in his eyes. What if there's some truth in what she says? What if there's something I don't know? Something that could explain... Explain what, son? Her attempts to steal my house? Her schemes with other elderly people? Her admission that she used you? He grimaced as if in physical pain. I know how it sounds, but part of me still... I don't know. 3 years, Dad. 3 years I lived with this woman, loved her. It's not that easy to just turn those feelings off, even knowing the truth. I sighed, understanding his dilemma. You can't command your heart, even when your mind is screaming about the danger. What do you want from me, Aiden? My blessing for this meeting? I don't know what I want. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of despair I knew so well. Probably just to talk to someone about it, to see if I'm crazy for even considering listening to her. I was thinking about how to respond when the doorbell rang. We both froze and looked at each other. We weren't expecting visitors this early. I'll get it, I said, getting up from the table. Simone and Pascal were standing at the door. They looked equally tense, but for different reasons. Pascal was alert and ready for action. Simone was strangely determined, like someone who had come to an important conclusion after much thought. I apologize for the intrusion, Pascal said, but Miss Bayless insisted on meeting. She said it was important. I need to talk to both of you, Simone said. Her voice sounded different, without its usual sweetness or feigned friendliness. It won't take long. I hesitated. Letting her into the house again seemed unwise, but something in her face, in her demeanor, was different. More sincere, if that word could even be applied to Simone. All right, I stepped aside, letting them in. We're just having breakfast. Would you like to join us? No, thank you. Simone shook her head. I'd rather just say what I have to say and leave. We went into the living room. Aiden was already standing in the doorway, his face a mixture of surprise and concern at the sight of Simone. What are you doing here? He asked. I told you I needed time to think. I know, but some things are better not to put off. She looked at me. May I sit down? What I'm about to say isn't easy. I pointed to a chair. Simona sat down, folding her hands in her lap, a gesture I had seen her make before, but now there was no pretense in it. I'm here to admit my guilt, she began without preamble. Everything you accuse me of is true. I did plan to take your house using forged documents, and yes, I've done this before with other elderly owners of expensive real estate. I was stunned by her directness. Aiden also looked shocked. Why are you confessing now? He asked, still standing in the doorway, as if hesitant to approach her. Because I have nothing to lose, she shrugged. You already know everything. You have the evidence. I'm cornered. What are you proposing? I asked, sitting down across from her. I'm proposing a deal, a final one. She straightened up. I'll admit everything officially in writing, under oath, whatever you want. I'll tell you about other scams, name my accomplices. In exchange, you won't press charges against me. Why would I do that? I narrowed my eyes. I already have all the evidence I need to put you behind bars. Your confession won't change anything. Because with my confession, the case will be closed quickly and cleanly. No lengthy investigations, no trial, no need for you or Aiden to testify, no publicity that would inevitably affect your reputation. She was right, and that annoyed me. Court is a public affair. And although I hadn't done anything illegal, the very fact that my family had been dragged into such a story could affect my reputation. And what do you plan to do after this deal? I asked. I'll leave Ratland. For good. She glanced quickly at Aiden. I'll start a new life somewhere far away from here. No scams, no fraud. A law-abiding citizen. And you expect me to believe in this sudden transformation? Honestly, I don't care whether you believe me or not, she shrugged. But I've had enough time to think. You've backed me into a corner, Penryn. For the first time in my life, I have no way out. It's sobering. I looked at Pascal, who was standing in the doorway, watching the conversation intently. He nodded slightly. He believed in Simone's sincerity, or at least in the seriousness of her intentions. What about Aiden? I looked back at her. What role do you see him playing in this new scenario? Simone finally looked directly at my son, something like regret flashing in her eyes. None. I'm leaving alone. Aiden flinched as if from a blow. Just like that? His voice sounded broken. 3 years of marriage and you're just leaving? What do you suggest, Aiden? She spread her arms. Continue living together after everything that's happened? After all the truth has come out? We both know that's impossible. He took a few steps forward, his face expressing confusion. I don't know. I thought maybe we could talk. Understand each other. Start with a clean slate. Simone shook her head, and for the first time ever, I saw genuine, not feigned sadness on her face. No, Aiden, some things can't be fixed. Some bridges are burned forever. What I did, how I used you, it's unforgivable, and we both know it. I watched this exchange with growing unease. Was Aiden still hoping to save their marriage? After everything she had done? So, I interrupted them, turning to Simone. Your proposal, you make a full confession, tell me about the other affairs, name your accomplices, and I won't press charges. Then you leave town, forever. Yes, she nodded. A clean break, for all of us. I considered her proposal. On the one hand, it really would be the cleanest and quickest resolution to the situation. On the other hand, part of me craved justice, wanted to see her answer for her crimes before the law. Okay, I said finally, but with one additional condition. What is it? Divorce, immediate. You sign all the necessary papers today. Simone didn't look surprised. Of course, I didn't expect anything else. Dad, Aiden stepped forward. You can't decide this for me. I turned to my son, surprised by his objection. You want to stay married to a woman who admitted she used you for fraud? I just want it to be my decision. He clenched his fists. Not yours, not hers, mine. I saw Simone watching this exchange with an unreadable expression on her face. What was she thinking? I need to talk to Simone alone, he said finally, before I make any decision. I wanted to object, to say that it was a bad idea, that she could manipulate him again. But then I realized he was a grown man. I couldn't make decisions for him forever. If he wanted to make a mistake, that was his right. Okay, I nodded, standing up. Pascal and I will be in the kitchen. When we left, Pascal put his hand on my shoulder. Are you sure this is wise? No, but he has to make this choice himself. We sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee in silence, listening intently to the muffled voices coming from the living room. Several times the tone rose, but we couldn't make out the words. Finally, after almost an hour, the living room door opened. Aiden entered the kitchen alone. Where's Simone? I asked, looking into his face, trying to understand what had happened. She went to pack her things. His voice sounded tired but determined. We're getting divorced. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. So he had made the right decision after all. I'm glad you were able to see the truth, son, I said, standing up to hug him. But Aiden stepped back, his gaze cold. I've seen many truths, Dad, and not all of them are about Simone. I froze, not understanding. What do you mean? She told me everything, about her past, her plans, how she used me. She didn't try to justify herself or deny anything. She just told the truth, for the first time since we've known each other. And that made you... It made me see the situation clearly. He crossed his arms over his chest. Yes, she used me. Yes, she tried to steal your house. Yes, she's a fraud. But you know what else I realize? That you, with all your righteousness, are no better. I recoiled as if he had hit me. What? How can you compare? You've been manipulating me my whole life, Dad, he interrupted. Maybe not for money, not for the house, but you've always tried to make me something I'm not. Always pressuring me, always criticizing me, always making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Aiden, that's not true. I was shocked by his words. I always wanted the best for you. By your standards, he smiled bitterly, but you never asked what I wanted. You never cared about my desires, my dreams. I didn't know how to respond. Was that really how he perceived my parenting? Was I really such a bad father? If I made mistakes, I finally said, it was only out of love for you. I never wanted to hurt you. I know, his voice softened. And Simone didn't plan to fall in love with me either. It just happened. Do you really believe she loved you? I couldn't hide my skepticism. I believed that part of her had real feelings for me. Maybe not from the very beginning, maybe not in the way a normal relationship should be. But there was something. I sighed. My son, despite everything, was still clinging to the illusion of love. And now what? I asked. Now I'm leaving, he said simply. Leaving? Where? With Simone? We're leaving town together. We'll start a new life somewhere where no one knows us. I felt the ground slipping away from under my feet. After everything that had happened, after all the evidence, after her own confession, he still chose her? Aiden, you can't be serious. That woman used you, lied to you, tried to steal my house. I know, and I'm not saying I forgive her or that it will be easy. He shook his head. But I want to try, because despite everything, I still love her. And because not the boy I raised, not the young man I tried to guide, but a grown man making his own decisions, even if, in my opinion, they were wrong. What about our deal? Asked Pascal, who had been silently observing our conversation. Is it still on? Yes, Aiden nodded. Simone agrees to all the terms. She'll write a full confession and name her accomplices. In exchange, you won't press charges. What about the divorce? I asked, still hoping that at least that part would remain in effect. There will be no divorce, at least not yet. He met my gaze firmly. We'll try again, for real, without lies, without manipulation. I wanted to argue to say that this was crazy, that he was making a huge mistake, but something in his eyes, a determination I had rarely seen before, made me keep quiet. It's your life, I said finally. Your decision. But if you leave with her, don't expect me to be part of this new life. I know, he nodded. I don't expect that. He headed for the door, then stopped and turned around. I'll come by tomorrow to pick up my things, if you don't mind. Of course, I felt something break inside me. This is still your home. No, Dad, he shook his head. This is your home. It's always been yours. And with that, he left, leaving me standing in the middle of the kitchen, stunned and devastated. Pascal came up to me and put his hand on my shoulder. I'm sorry, Penryn. He's making a terrible mistake. I shook my head. She's using him again. Maybe, but I helped him pack the few things he had left in my house. As he was leaving, I couldn't help myself. Are you sure this is what you want? He stopped at the door and looked at me for a long time, as if memorizing my face. No, I'm not sure, but I have to try. Those were the last words I heard from my son. A week later, Simone's lawyer gave Pascal the promised testimony, a detailed description of all her schemes, the names of her accomplices, dates, amounts, everything we had asked for. And a day later, I learned that she and Aiden had left Rutland. They left without saying goodbye, without leaving an address. I stood in my restored office looking out the window at the garden that Veronica loved so much and felt a strange sense of relief. Yes, I had lost my son. Yes, he had chosen a woman who would most likely break his heart again. But I had done everything I could. I had revealed the truth. I had protected my home. I offered him a choice. And now whatever happens, it's his path. A month later, I invited Pascal to dinner. We sat in the dining room, reminiscing about old times, talking about the investigations we had conducted together. We didn't mention Aiden and Simone, an unspoken agreement between two old friends. After dinner, I showed him the documents I had prepared. I changed the will, I said. I removed Aiden from the list of heirs. Pascal raised his eyebrows. Are you sure? That's a serious step. I'm sure, I nodded. As long as Simone is around, I can't take any chances. She'll find a way to get my inheritance, even if we exclude her directly. And what do you plan to do with the house? With all your property? I smiled. I've set up a charitable foundation in Veronica's name. After my death, the house will become a training center for young financiers, specializing in the investigation of economic crimes, a kind of legacy, so that in the future there will be more people capable of exposing people like Simone. Pascal raised his glass. To the legacy. To the legacy, I touched his glass with mine. We drank, and I felt a strange calmness. Yes, I was alone in my big house. Yes, my only son had chosen a different path, turning his back on me. But I still had my memories of Veronica, my pride in the work I had done all my life, and the knowledge that I had not allowed anyone to deceive me or take away what I had earned through honest labor. Sometimes loneliness is not the worst choice. Sometimes it is better to be alone than to be with those who wish you ill. And sometimes in order to find peace, you have to let go of even those you love the most.